Conservation Commission elected, consistent with Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend the meeting can be found in the Town of Sturbridge website. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen or watch the meeting may do so in the following manner through sturbridge.vod.castus.tv/VOD. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post the Sturbridge website and audio or video recordings or other comprehensive records of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. For those unable to participate virtually, written comments will be accepted in advance of the public hearing. Now I'm going to read the statement for public hearings just so we have that in the record. In the interest of saving time, the Sturbridge Conservation Commission will hold all public hearings tonight for work within a wetland, water body, or resource area and or within the 200-foot buffer zone to a wetland, water body, or resource area in accordance with the Mass Wetland Protection Act, MGL, Chapter 131, Section 40, and associated regulations, and the Town of Sturbridge Wetlands bylaws and associated regulations. We will not be reading the newspaper ads prior to opening the first hearing. For each project, the applicant is to submit proof of notification to abutters within 200 feet of the subject property line and proof of legal newspaper advertisement. If these items are not submitted, the public hearing will not open. Additionally, prior to the start of each public hearing, we will announce the location of the project, the applicant, and the applicant's representative. And since you can't sign in, you can't sign in. We'll go to start off, we'll have a quorum check, and we have all 5 members are in attendance. Becky, do you have anything before we go to committee updates?
We do have Matt Watsky on the line to discuss the 36 Goodrich Road project, since we do have 2 continuations at our first public hearing. So I'll leave that up to you if you want to do your committee updates real quick, and then we can move into agenda items.
Yeah, let's get the committee updates out of the way. I think they'll be short. CPA, our next meeting will be on Wednesday, the 27th, coming up at 7 o'clock, and it will be a virtual meeting. And the only subject is lights for the Little League ball field. So, David?
Lights for the ball field.
There was a virtual Trails Committee meeting last Tuesday night, and at it, the discussion primarily had to do with the work which is proposed, which is primarily work on the Riverlands, although there also was a brief section of discourse where, depending upon the number of volunteers available, they'll be sending them out to clear some, widen some of the trails that are down in the Plimpton property. However, there was one really interesting piece of good news that came out of the electronic services today concerning our trails. As you guys may remember, the town was very nice 3 years ago to purchase for the Trails Committee using CPA money 3 counters. And the counters have been placed at different locations, and there was a lot of mucking about in order to be able to get some kind of rationale, because these things come as if they're counters, and everybody's going to be a really good sport about it. So one of the first things the Trails Committee had to do was find some sort of a secure box that they could put in so that they didn't disappear, but at the same time, we're still able to count in and out. But at any rate, The month of April numbers came in today. And when all of the multiplications and divisions had taken place, because some of the counters count people going in on the trail as one, coming out off the trail as two, and all of that was done just between the trails that are on Lead Mine and the trails that are on the Heinz Farm property for the 30 days of April. 6,500 people walked on the trails. And we still have two sets of open space more trails on. So anyone that thought, in fact, these trails were not going to be used, and you know, granted we got the coronavirus that's really boosting the numbers. But if you look at the raw numbers, we're talking about over 1,100. And there's just some, as I indicated before, multiplication and division taking place to make sure we don't have any duplicates if that's possible. 6,500 is a nice round number for the number of people, individuals, who actually went on the trails. I remind you, these things are set up so that a child under 3.5 feet is not going to be counted. A dog, a cat, a bobcat, they're not going to be counted. It is possible, if we see one at midnight, that it could be a deer or a bear, but in fact, none of the numbers indicated anything like that. So the 6,500 seems to be a number that you can hang your hat on.
Is there a time thing to it, David?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a good one. It tells you when they were there?
Absolutely. We have a volunteer who actually does a spreadsheet on these. And if you're interested in a spreadsheet, Tom sent it to me today. I can download it to anybody that wants it. It shows the hours and it shows the days for the entire month. It's really kind of fascinating because just by looking at the general structure of the spreadsheet, you can see that there are 10 to 12 boosts, 3 to 5 boosts. Saturday, nobody shows up until 10:30. Like the other days, but they show up earlier. Anyway, I think it's a wonderful use of the open space in town.
Fantastic. I do too. Eric, anything on Lake Advisory? Eric,
I put myself on mute. Sorry about that. No meetings, nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. And there will be no minutes for the last meeting to approve. So why don't we go to Matt? Becky, you want to start it off?
So we have a continued discussion from our last meeting. The last meeting we did have a public hearing for 36 Goodrich Road, the notice of intent application, which was received as a result of an enforcement order. You did vote to approve that. A permit has been drafted. What was continued for discussion was discussion on the fines that were issued. And I'll let Mr. Watsky go into his request. But they did have a request to look at those fines and have a discussion of potential rescinding them.
All right, Mr. Chair, may I proceed?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. It was a good, quick recap by Rebecca. I'll give you a quick timeline. So the enforcement order was issued on January 24th. Then a letter with a notice of noncompliance was issued on January 28th. Those were issued while the Guns were in their car driving to the Carolinas for their winter vacation. They received a phone call from their daughter on February 1st saying that she had just received the first enforcement order, the enforcement order dated January 24, because it got forwarded from the Guns address to the daughter. The Guns contacted Rebecca promptly. They had a series of emails. The first time that they actually received and were able to read the January 24 enforcement order was February 3rd. The fine started on February 5th. as we talked about the last meeting, that you were anticipating a 2-week time period from when someone received notice to when you expected to have a notice of intent filed and have a response. So you set February 5th, assuming that they would get it the same day it was issued. They didn't get it until February 3rd. So there were fines issued on February 5, 6, 7, 10, 11, and 12 for a total of $475. That's the 1 week following the enforcement order receipt by the Guns. They filed the notice of intent on February 13, only 8 days after they received it. I guess that's 10 days after they received it, but there was a weekend in there. So they filed it on the 13th, and then the fines continued. I'm not quite sure I understand the rationale. As Rebecca indicated, that she interpreted the terms of the enforcement order to say that they needed to not only file a notice of intent, but also to give a written indication of their intention to comply. The Guns didn't understand that there was something separate as an addition to filing a notice of intent that they needed to do. They assumed and understood that they filed a notice of intent, that was their indication that they were going to do what was demanded of them. So the fines continued to get issued from February 13th through March 12th. It was 12 more fines at $100 a day. So there are $475 of fines that were issued during the week period subsequent to their actual receipt of the enforcement order. And they filed a notice of intent, and there were 12 more days at $1,200 that were imposed after they'd already filed a notice of intent. So I'm requesting that the commission to just rescind all of the fines, because from your own discussions at the last meeting, you expected that someone should be able to respond, although I think it's too quick, but you thought that they should be able to respond within 2 weeks. They in fact responded within only 10 days, so from when they actually received the order. So they met that expectation. And then I don't see any basis, and I hope that you agree, to continue imposing fines after they'd actually filed the notice of intent. So they follow through. That's my explanation for our thought process and our request for you to rescind them.
All right, Becky, do you have a position on this?
So, I mean, I think there is some challenges were presented with getting the enforcement order to them. Unfortunately, they did leave the state, and I think, as Mr. Watsky did say, I think they did take immediate action to address this. And as he indicated, they did file the notice of intent. It didn't include kind of what we had detailed in the enforcement order as the restoration plan, and they did, once that was kind of discussed a little bit more, and Matt and I had the ability to discuss that, he was able to put that into writing and provide that to the commission. I think they did meet the expectation and have, they have filed the notice of intent with the restoration plan, with the plantings. I think that it's a good outcome here. I think you do have the ability to take that into consideration and determine if you want to stay with the issuance of the fines or not. I think they did a good job, and if you feel you have the ability to rescind them, it would be my recommendation to do so.
All right, David?
As you know, I'm opposed to rescinding the fines, primarily because, as Mr. Watsky said, a lot of this is the response time that we receive from the Guns. And we'll agree that we got a response in January after the fines began, but since 2016, the response has been, no, ain't going there. No, ain't going to do it. Yes, I'm going to do my own thing no matter what. And that's 5 years of response time. Never mind 2 weeks. I am worried about setting a precedent. If you throw the fines out there, and then immediately when the person says, yep, okay, you're going to fine me, I'll do it, and you rescind the fines, what good is it doing it? I don't agree with the philosophy that DEP has, which says you can throw the fines out there and then just eliminate the fines after the fact. I think the fine is for a specific action that was not taken, and we were not able to get a plan that was viable from the guns in a reasonable time frame, and we were basing, Mr. Watsky, a lot of our opinions in January and February on the final storming out of the last meeting, where it was heard down the hall by Mr. Gunn that I ain't doing anything that these people tell me to do. And thus, we felt that it was important for us to make this part of the deal.
Steve,
May I respond to one issue, Mr. Chairman?
I beg your pardon?
May I just respond to one issue that Mr. Barnacle just raised?
I'll give you a response at the end. I'm trying, this is in the walk-in time that we're doing this. So you can respond to everything that you want to one time at the end. All right?
All right.
Steve Haldeman?
Steve Haldeman. I pretty much agree with Dave. In my 25 years with DEP, I don't remember anybody ever rescinding a penalty after it was issued. So I know I didn't when I was the deputy director. But anyway, yeah, I agree with Dave. I wasn't around on this committee since 2016, and all these things were put forward. And there are some glitches here where they were out of town, and I think that if we're going to do some penalties, then probably shouldn't include the idea of having to respond and have an NOI in front of us 5 days. So maybe there's a little give there, but otherwise I don't see the sense of rescinding these penalties.
Stephen Chidester?
This is Stephen Chidester. Yeah, I'm tending to agree with David and Steve. I might be willing to have, a reduction of the fines based on when the original NOI was submitted, even though it wasn't exactly what we asked for. I would be willing to maybe waive the fines after that date. But I agree with David that this has been something that's been dragging on for a very long time, and the only time we got the person's attention was by instituting these fines. So there was a reason why we implemented that.
Eric?
That's it.
Yeah, so my opinion on this hasn't changed. I don't have a problem with waiving or rescinding the fines, but as long as it is legally viable, I would like to make the triggering mechanism be the completion of the project, and then have them come back for a request for waiver. Because at the end of the day, this has gone on way too long. There's been too much non-compliance, and I don't have a problem putting a pause if we're legally able to do so. Maybe we have to check with council or confirm with Jeff, but at the end of the day, I'd like to see the project completed, and then figure out at the end, once this is all said and done to the satisfaction of the commission, talk about remedying this situation.
This is Ed Goodwin. I kind of agree with, I've got pieces of each of the other committee members. I guess I'm closest to Eric on this. I'm not necessarily in favor of fines, but I see with the Dunns, we saw no other solution through the years. We saw no other solution. We also received plans from the Dunn that were never executed. So we have nothing at this point that we haven't had before. So to say that, voila, we have a plan and everybody's happy, we've been there before. It's a question of execution. So I'd like to hold this off until they execute the plan and keep the fines in place. So whether you can, I don't necessarily need the money. I don't feel the town should be using it as a vehicle to get money, but the fact that they went on vacation is irrelevant to me, and it would be in any other legal sense, I believe. The fact that we had our agent working on this when she could have been doing other better things because the Duns told us to go blankety blank, 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 just, to me, puts us in the situation where we need to continue this until we have the correction to the property and the protection to the Wetland Protection Act. So go ahead, Matt.
Are we able?
Sorry.
I told Matt he could come back in the end. Was somebody who is Eric? You were going to ask a question.
Eric.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Jeff. Are we able to press pause on this discussion and not have any collection action, and then revisit it at the point that the project is completed? Is that a viable off ramp in this conversation?
I believe so, but we can check with legal counsel in the morning.
Yeah. So,
Steve, I've got a quick question. Ed,
go.
have the Guns completed the request that we have made? Are they? I know they still have to do the work, but we're not going to fine them until they actually finish the work, are we? I mean, the penalty was to just get this thing off the dime, and I guess they've done that. So there's nothing. In other words, have the penalties stopped? I guess that's more of a question for Becky.
Yes.
Okay. Well, personally, I don't see the rationale of waiting until this thing is completed. We're going to assume they're going to complete it. We all saw the plans, and let's assume that they're going to complete it. The fines did what fines are supposed to do, and that is to get people off the dime. It's not a penalty. It's just a fine to start paying attention to us, or it's going to cost you $100 a day. And we went through that exercise, and it worked. So, Eric, I understand what you're saying, but I don't understand why you're saying it. We're not going to rescind the fines because they do a nice job. That's their job to do, and we've made a few mistakes in the past in that respect. But anyway, that's my feedback. I don't see anything else we're waiting.
Well, since this is informal from the point of view of where we stand on it, I'd like to make a motion that I'd like to have a motion.
Ed, aren't we going to hear from Matt first?
Yep, go ahead, Matt. Yep.
Okay.
I was going to shut you right out. Sorry.
That's all right. All right. So, first point is what were the fines imposed for? And Mr. Barnacle has expressed himself as he did the last time that his focus, his concern is on the past violation, the non-compliance with the conditions of the expired order. But these fines were not issued for violation of that prior order. They could do no work under that expired order. It would have been a violation of the Wetlands Protection Act and of your bylaw if they'd gone ahead with work after that order expired. Fines were issued as triggered by the enforcement order. The enforcement order said, file your notice of intent in X number of days, or else you will be subject to fines. Your expectation was that they would file a notice of intent within 2 weeks. You set the deadline of February 5th as the first day that you would start imposing those fines, giving them 2 weeks after the issue. The Guns only got it on February 3rd, and they filed their notice of intent on February 13th. So once they got the enforcement order, they complied with the enforcement order and got something filed to you remarkably promptly, especially considering that they were out of state. They got a hold of Mark Barrow, they explained to him what was going on, and he prepared and filed a notice of intent, and I was involved as well. We got it filed as quickly as possible and in a shorter time frame than the commission expected from when they received the order. So that's $475 that are fines imposed subsequent to the deadline that you set, but during a period where they didn't have 2 weeks to respond. The rest of it, though, you have $1,200. So this is the next point. $1,200 were imposed 12 days, $100 apiece, after they filed the notice of intent. Your enforcement order said, file a notice of intent. That's what they did. What's the rationale for continuing to impose daily fines after they complied with the key provision of the enforcement order? They had no understanding whatsoever, and nor did I, that there was any expectation on the enforcement order that they submit something extra. I spoke with Rebecca about the fines. Why are they continuing to get the fines? She said, it's because they didn't give us something in writing saying they intended to comply. So really, that's what you're looking for? I sent her an email that day.
Can I just add?
The notice of intent was compliant.
Go ahead, Becky.
So just the order, what the order stated, number 2 on there. First was to cease and desist with any work occurring, because there was work occurring on the property, which was outlined in the enforcement order.
They weren't doing anything there.
Yeah, Matt, she's speaking.
I understand.
Yeah, I mean there was some work occurring with stone walls and et cetera that was being done. I think his permit expired in 2016. But so order number 2, it said file a new notice of intent, including a remediation work plan to bring the project back into compliance. The new notice of intent shall detail when and how the project will be brought into compliance, shall include a commitment to implement the previously approved project plans and include a timeline of activities. So it was just the notice of intent was received, and that's what I was trying to explain to the Guns. And it was really once Matt and I had the conversation, he understood what what was asked for in the order, and he did immediately that same day provide that email, which was dated February 27th at that time.
Can I ask a question?
What is the timeline of activities, Becky?
Well, what we asked for was when they would be able to complete this project, to take the deck out and to, what we discussed was doing it prior to the end of the growing season this year, so removal of the decks. There wasn't a set date given for that, but the anticipation would be as soon as they received a permit, and they could get plantings in, which would be established by, I think we used the end of October, beginning of November as the date. And that's what I outlined in the draft order of conditions too. And that was outlined in Mr. Watsky's email that was their plan. So they did provide that afterwards.
There is an issue. This is David Barnacle. There's an issue that has been avoided, and that should not be avoided in this particular case. At the time that the plan was being looked at, which goes back to November and December of last year, the entire plan was in violation of the Wetland Protection Act because it did not conform to the plan that had been approved by the Conservation Commission. So there are fully 2 years of time when the folks were living in that house that had a plan for all of the front area that had not been approved. It was in violation of the plan that had been approved. So to simply focus on a plan that was going to be submitted in 2020 and ignoring the fact that for several years the plan had been violated, I think is wrong.
Ed, it's Eric. Can I talk?
Yep, go ahead, Eric.
Actually, Jeff had his hand up. I'd like to hear what Jeff had to say before I speak.
I just had a question, Mr. Chair. What's the estimated value of the work to be done? How much do we think it's going to cost him to get this work done?
I can't give you that, but maybe Matt can, because they've been working diligently to, have they got quotes? Matt?
I don't have that information. I know they have a contractor lined up now, but I don't have the information about the cost of the contract.
So, this is Eric again. Matt, I appreciate you trying to advocate for your client. You're doing an admirable job. But the issue at hand is the notice of intent that was originally submitted to us was garbage. It didn't do anything to address the non-compliance and the enforcement action that was brought and then a subsequent set of plans was brought to bring everything into compliance. So they brought us the notice of intent, and that's fine. And that was kind of, jacks are better to get us into the game. But they didn't address the underlying issue, which was there was, all of those decks were still left in the plan that they submitted as the notice of intent. And that was not in compliance with the original plan, which is what was put into the original enforcement order, that he needs to be brought into compliance with the original plan. So I really don't care what happened in 2016 or what happened in the past. I've only been here since 2019. But the reality is the plan that was submitted in front of us in early February did not address the enforcement order. And, so the additional fines are completely justifiable under that, and I guess I just don't understand. I mean, maybe, I've already issued my opinion of how I think this should go, but I don't think that that's really a leg to stand on to argue that a notice of intent was issued, because I could write down notice of intent on a piece of paper and hand it in. It doesn't mean that it's going to do anything. So just my 2 cents.
All right, we're going to have to shut this down. I'd like to. Is there anybody on the phones, Jeff?
Holly's checking.
This was old business.
Is there anyone on the phone for 36 Goodrich?
No, Mr. Chair? No one on the phone?
Thank you. I'd like to have a motion to close the public hearing and
Well, it's not a public hearing.
well, it isn't a public hearing, no. All right, I'm going to close down the public then. I have a motion from somebody on how we want to handle this. We've got a series of different views. David?
Can I ask a quick question of Becky? This is Steve Halterman. Can I ask a quick question of Becky? Becky, why were the fines after the February the 29th? You're sort of indicating that that now we've got the NOI and restoration plan. So why were the fines continued until March 12th?
No, it was continued to March 2nd, which was the day before the meeting for you guys to discuss it. So it was only one more day.
That was when we stopped it.
After, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Somehow I heard the 12th. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, so to me, being fair, it seems to me that fines before February 13th, when they were out of town, I would like to make a motion that we fine the guns from the period of the 13th to March 2nd. I'm sorry. Yeah, I guess February 29th or March 2nd, whichever. February 29th would probably be more fair. Sorry to be rambling, but just to kind of move this thing forward, I would move that the penalties remain for the period of February 13th to March 2nd. February 29th, I'm sorry.
This is Stephen Chittister, I second.
Well, how much money is that?
February 27th.
What does that come out to, Beck? You got it in front of you there?
8, 9, 10, 11, $1,200.
$1,200. Do I have a second on that?
Steve Chidester.
He just said the
That's
13th.
Steve. Okay, that's right. Sorry, Stephen. Yeah. Discussion? All in favor? Starting with David?
Barnacle in favor.
Steve? Halterman?
Steve Halterman, in favor.
Stephen Chidester.
Stephen Chittister in favor.
Eric Casper.
Eric Gaspar opposed.
And Ed Goodwin in favor. All right. Thanks, Matt.
Good night.
Thanks a lot.
All right, let's move on here, Beck. Where are we at?
I see Bill Cody's on, but I don't know that Glenn Kravosky's on yet. Bill, did you want to start?
Yes.
Did you want to discuss? Okay. All right, so I'll just... So Bill, is Glenn coming on the call?
He's not available right now. He's at some other meeting.
Okay. So you want to have the discussion now or wait till he's available?
He's not sure what time he's going to be available, so.
Okay.
I
think that
at the last meeting.
Okay, we're at 6:15. Let me just announce it, Bill. What?
Yep. Go ahead. These public hearings have been continued, so I'll let you announce it, and I can.
Yeah. 130 and 140 Fisk Hill Road, request for determination of applicability, continued from March 3rd. G. Goulis, Allsworth LLC, represented by Glenn Kravosky, EBT Environmental Consultants.
Okay. So we've received a continuance request for that public hearing that is scheduled for 7 p.m. on June 2nd.
All right.
This is David Barnacle. I'd like to make a point here that on June 2nd, when we reviewed this, we cannot accept another continuance. It's been 2 years of continuations. This is not the intent of how the Wetland Protection Act is supposed to be taken care of. Either the owner and the engineer have got to formalize something, or they've got to back out, get it back together, and then resubmit to us. But we cannot every single month have this on the agenda and have them request a continuation.
Okay, anyone else want to comment on it?
I can add in. I agree
I'd
with.
like to make a comment. I'd like to say that I agree with David, and we should continue at this time and tell them that it will not be continued again without action. Anybody disagree with that?
I was going to make the same suggestion.
What? All right, Stephen Chidester, you all set with that?
Yep, I agree with you.
Yeah. All right, got that back?
Yep.
All right. Now we're on to 630, 27 Ladd Road, Notice of Intent, DEP File number 300-1056, continued from February 4th. R. Jennings, 508 International, applicant ASU, owner, and O'Neill, representative, replacement of decking on the pole bridge. Where does that stand?
Mr. Chair, this is Stephen Chittister. I'm recused for this hearing.
Thanks, Steve.
I received a written request today to request a continuation for this. The reason for that being is they need additional time to complete the trails, wetland flagging, and associated survey work required to generate the plan.
Okay.
So the continuation's originally from February 4th.
This is Eric. Did they give you a timeline?
They did not provide a timeline. It's my understanding that they're out there doing the work right now. And just so you're aware, we do have a mid-June court date follow-up set on this for the enforcement order. I think that at that point in time, if we keep continuing, maybe you need to I would recommend you have a discussion on how you'd like to kind of proceed with that being with the mid-court date in June in the future.
Becky, Is there any comment on who they've got doing the wetland delineation? I know the project expanded. Do we?
Miss Glenn Kravosky is doing the work, and the previous plan, I don't have it in front of me. That it's a firm in Charlton that's doing the engineering. Jason Dubois.
So they're doing it. All right.
Land survey. Yep.
So
I can ask for
continuation
some
to the
more
next meeting.
specifics.
Yeah. Can we also tell them that they need to come ready to present and ready to
Yep.
move toward completion?
Yes.
So anybody want to comment? All in favor of continuing? Steve Halterman?
Steve Alderman, I agree with what you're recommending.
Eric? Yep.
Eric Gaspar, I agree.
David Barnacle?
David Barnacle agrees.
And Ed Goodwin, I agree. And Stephen Chidester abstains. All right. We are on to, we got 5 minutes before 6:45. Becky, what do you want to do?
So we have, so we have Mr. Cody on here. So I can just give a quick summary. So this was an extension request we received for 9 Holland Road, DEP file number 300-959. We did receive that. It was on our last meeting agenda.
Is it on our agenda tonight?
It's on. It is. It is because the Mr. Kravosky put in a new request. So we do have that. I have that.
Where is that? I'm looking. I don't see it. Cedar Special Goodrich. Okay, I got it.
I thought I had it.
Sorry.
You got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
The
Okay.
old
Good.
business.
Okay.
Old business.
Yes. Under old business. Made me nervous there. So we did have it on there. We did discuss it. Unfortunately, I think Mr. Cody and Mr. Kravosky were on, but didn't hear us ask if there was anyone else on for some meeting agenda items. So we did discuss it, and you guys at that point decided not to issue an extension. I did provide you some materials to review that were provided to me, asking you to reconsider your vote on that extension and give a 6-month extension. Mr. Kravosky has kind of outlined some reasons why he's requesting an extension, and part of that goes back to this historic mill complex discussion of resource area. So with the previous orders of conditions that were issued for this project, this is a reminder, I think some people might not have been on the commission at that time, that permit was issued as a result of an enforcement order for activities on the property, and there was some restoration done there. So some of that restoration was done prior to my starting here. The project got kind of put on hold. The reason we're having these discussions again is because some work started to continue out there in violation, which resulted in another enforcement order. So this permit is set to expire on May 22nd. They would like an extension to finish some of the outstanding items. Some of that is what was ordered under the enforcement order, which at the time of the last meeting, we didn't have this other information provided, and thought that, you know, the reason for the permit was to address the previous enforcement, close that, work under the current enforcement order to close that. So part of what he's asking and requesting is he's saying that in the permit, there's a special condition because they have riverfront on the property. It says the proposed project utilizes the maximum limit of riverfront area permitted under the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act. No further activity shall be permitted on the balance of the subject parcel with the exception of maintenance of the area unless they are filed as a limited project under 310 CMR 10.533 or are exempt under 310 CMR 10.58. That's the riverfront portion of the regulations. So my take on this is that this permit was issued as a result of an enforcement order. The conditions of the permit should have been, you know, there's an appeal period time where a property owner, permit holder can go through the process if they feel that they're, you know, they have an issue with the permit and go through that appeal process, which wasn't done at the time. I think that the the continuation of filling in ruts and maybe removal of a pipe and things like that can be done under the current enforcement order. And I think that also the question about other activities being able to occur on the property, in the riverfront regulations where it talks about exemptions, the historic mill complexes is one of the things that can be an exemption, and that's something that I had some conversations with DEP previously about when that was brought to our attention by the current consultant. It wasn't brought up previously on this project back in 2016 and 17. That is something where, you know, they really should file an ANRAD or can file an RDA to ask for that exemption. The ANRAD can show all their resource areas and they can exclude the areas they think are exempt, or they can file an RDA with some supporting information to go forward with that historic mill. So my interpretation is that leaving the condition, I don't think would interfere with their ability to redevelop portions of the property within riverfront, or be able to do a limited project or do anything that would be considered exempt. So I don't necessarily.
So you're saying close down the enforcement order and they can refile? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I got all your stuff that on the letter of conditions.
Wait, Bill. Wait, Bill.
Yes, I think that we should close out the old order, finalize the restoration work under the current enforcement order, and they can file an ANRAD or an RDA for the exemption.
Okay. All right, David? Oh, no, go to Bill. I'm sorry, Bill.
Okay, I believe I took care of everything under the letter of conditions. I cemented up that pipe. I put a basin in down there. I fixed the top basin. But the thing was, we were worried about, and we're checking with the lawyers, and I thought Rebecca was checking with the lawyers, that it has to be switched over to Old Mill Complex before this letter of conditions run out. I just talked to Glenn. I was on the phone with him. He says he won't be able to be with us until 7:30, 7:45. I don't know if, I had plans, what was going on. But we really wish we would not close that out until we know for sure. All the stuff that was there, I believe I have taken care of. So the only thing on the, is to switch over to Old Mill Complex. So I think
I hear what you're saying, but I don't really feel that this committee is without a filing, is ready to consider switching over to the an old mill complex within this enforcement order that we have in place. So I'd like to hear from the committee on it. David?
I really believe that we should close out the existing order, and I believe that we should have an ANRAD. And then we can consider this as a limited project, and then at least the ANRAD would give us a sense of exactly what is present on the property. We'll be able to really focus on all the various details of the property, while at the same time permitting a limited project. A limited project can be exactly what Bill wants to be able to finish.
Okay. Steve Haldeman.
Steve Haldeman. Yeah, I agree. I think what Dave is saying is in line with what Rebecca is saying, and I don't disagree with either one of those. I agree with both of them.
Eric?
Eric Gaspar. Bill, what additional hoops would you have to jump through to get the riverfront onto the next next action, the next permit? What is the difference to you or to the property owner of one versus the other? Do you have any feeling for that, or can you explain that to me?
we're just going to go through the steps now, but I'm under the understanding that once this letter of conditions is closed out, it cannot be switched over to Old Mill Complex. I have no idea why. I'm going by what Glenn has said to me. He's been checking with a lawyer and someone else Rebecca knows. They've been talking to each other. I'm not sure what the story is on that. But all the stuff that was on the letter of conditions, I believe, has been completed. So I don't see what the big deal of giving me 6 months, or at least waiting till we know for sure what the lawyers say about it. I've never done this stuff before, so Glenn has, and I believe he's been in contact with Rebecca. All the stuff, if you want to check it out, I got that pipe cemented both sides of it. I put a base.
We're getting into the details of Bill. We're getting into the details of the enforcement order. That's exactly what I don't want to start flying around. This is Ed Goodman. I feel that we should. I feel that we should close this out, and if you want to file an ANRAD, fine.
May I ask what the problem, though, is giving until we hear what the lawyers have to say about if we can do this with closing it out? I don't understand why we couldn't, but I've been told by a number of people that if we close the letter of conditions, it can't be switched to Old Mill Complex. That don't make any sense to me.
Doesn't make any sense to me.
I haven't.
Makes sense. We talk to the lawyers and find out what the lawyers have to say about it, or I believe Rebecca was supposed to talk to somebody about it. I'm not positive on things.
Well, so let me just clarify. I've spoken to DEP about the historic mill complex question and about extending this condition. And what I said earlier was their recommendation. Mr. Kravosky hasn't provided me anything from anyone's counsel on their understanding of it. I haven't discussed it with town council. The only person that I spoke to was DEP, and what their guidance would be, and that's what I've already stated. Now, I just want to add, I guess at this time, because we're under the emergency order, any permits that expire can be extended for a little while, so that could give some time. However, you have asked for a request for an extension that has been voted on, which adds to the complexity of that.
Ed, this is Eric again. Can I just give a suggestion? Since this isn't a public hearing, and since Glenn is not available and clearly has some insight, if Bill doesn't mind hanging around, I wouldn't have a problem moving on to the next public hearing, waiting until Glenn can show up and later in the meeting and give us his perspective on this, so we could have a more full understanding of exactly what the concern is from Glenn's perspective.
I would appreciate.
From my point of view, Eric, Ed Goodwin, we've already voted on this and closed it down at the last meeting. So to go back on that now, or to even just throw a visitor in the meeting, it just creates a situation where we have no structure. Why can't he file an ANRAD with us and come forward with that? I don't understand that. We have a formal filing procedure, and we need to, these aren't our friends coming in for a beer. This is trying to.
No, I understand. This is Eric again. I'm just saying that I don't see the harm in waiting. If Bill doesn't mind waiting, if Glenn's going to come in anyway, I don't see the harm in waiting until 7:30 or 8 o'clock when Glenn is available, just so we can at least have the full story. And then, if that ends up being the case, that ends up being the case.
That would be appreciated.
Well, we can put this. If the rest of the committee members are amenable, we'll put it off to the last thing of the meeting tonight. Anybody want to comment on that?
This is David Barnacle. I'm not opposed to letting it go until the end. We could also deal with it right now by giving a 2-week extension. In 2 weeks, we could get something formalized by Mr. Kravosky to the board so that we can actually see what's going on instead of listening to prattle, which is what we oftentimes hear.
Didn't we close it? Becky, could you? Yeah. Dave, we closed this out at the last meeting. We
Correct.
So it's closed out. So he can come in anytime he wants. There's nothing official, no 2-week extension. We closed it out.
This is Steve Haldeman. Why are we
Yeah.
discussing this tonight?
Because they came in. Becky set them on the agenda. And they did get messed up by the phone call last week.
I really think that it's important. This is Dave Barnacle again. I really think it's important that ultimately we get an ANRAD done on that property. And that needs to be really pushed with Mr. DiBonaventura.
Okay.
Because an ANRAD is going to answer a lot of the questions that we have, and it's going to include the riverfront.
Okay. Does anybody else? If I got anybody else that agrees with that, Steve?
Yeah, this is Stephen Chittister. I haven't had a chance to weigh in yet, but I agree with David and with Becky's recommendations.
Steve Alderman?
Steve Haldeman, I agree with Becky and Dave. Yeah, and I think I'm saying that twice.
And I have to throw my 2 cents. I agree also. Bill, it's been closed down. We need an ANRAD if you're interested in bringing it back to us.
Okay, plus we got more time because the state closed things down, so it'll be a little bit longer anyway, so.
Right. You're absolutely right.
Right.
All right.
Okay, I'll talk
Thanks,
to you later.
Bill. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Becky?
We're at 6:45 now, Ed.
So we can do 6:45. Ladd Road, 30 Ladd Road. Request for determination of applicability, continued from May 5th. Matt Gagner, owner, J.D. Mayo of J.D. Land and Natural Resource Stewardship for the improvement, expansion, and restoration of fields, development of agricultural storage area, and other work.
Jeff, can I ask that you share my screen at this time?
Sure, hold on. Give me a minute. I'll just make you the presenter.
And this is David Barnacle. I'm recused from 16 Ladd Road.
This is 20. This is 30 Ladd Road.
30.
Oh, so is that the
It's
part
30
of it,
Ladd
Dave?
Road.
All right, Becky, you can share your screen now.
So just to clarify, so the application, the part where it says the property says 30 Ladd Road, but it also includes 11 Ladd Road.
Yep.
And I think what Dave's in the butter to is 11 Ladd Road.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so
All right,
you're
so this
recruiting
was-
yourself, David, right?
Correct?
You're recruiting?
Yes.
Go ahead, Becky, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Just to provide a quick summary from the last meeting. Last meeting we discussed the RDA in front of us, which is for the agricultural uses. There was some question with the Field 1 as shown on the plan, with the wetland area in the revised plan reflecting that resource area sketch. In addition, members of the board were interested in performing a site visit to look at that. As well as the RDA, we were also discussing the forest cutting plan out there, which has been approved by DCR. So what you have in front of you is that revised plan that, if you can see up in the top section where Field 1 is, where my cursor is, there's like a finger wetland drawn up into the field. In addition, there's some isolated wetlands that have been added into the forest area. And then as we go to the south here, there's an agricultural storage area and 2 fields shown as Field 2 and 3 on those portions of the property. So to divide this up, what we had discussed last time and what my recommendations were, this is for the issuance of a determination of applicability. So up in the south portion where Field 2, 3 in the agricultural storage area is based off of my kind of review of this, it appears that those proposed activities would be outside of our 100-foot state jurisdictional buffer. It also appears that it's outside of our 200 local wetland bylaw buffer. And then it wasn't clear to me that if it was completely outside of the 500 foot on the 8% slope, which is related to the Sturbridge zoning bylaw. I did ask for something in writing, which was provided to me from the last meeting, that does confirm that as far as the 8% slope for ag fields and storage area, the property owner is committed to not exceeding field restoration or construction or agricultural storage areas on slopes greater than 8% within the 500-foot bylaw jurisdictional area. So based off of that information, it would appear that those areas would not be subject to the state wetland bylaw or local bylaw or the Sturbridge zoning bylaw 4.04. So that's on the southern portion where my cursor is. Now, down where field 1 is, that field, which is 11 Ladd Road, does appear is within jurisdictional buffer zone to protected resource areas. It does appear that portions of the property would also fall potentially within some riverfront area, which is a resource area. And the question was about, is in the RDA, is that area or that work subject to either the state wetland law or our local wetland bylaw? And based off the information that's been provided to date, it would appear to me that work proposed there, which is agricultural activities in that area, would appear to be subject to both state and the local wetland bylaw. So it would be my recommendation to kind of break down a determination here and issue one kind of separately for the 11 Ladd Road with a positive determination subject to both state and local wetland bylaw. And then for the 30 Ladd Road, it would be my recommendation to issue negative determination not subject to state bylaw or local town bylaw.
Okay. All right.
This is Jim. Can I make a comment?
Sure.
First, thank you, Rebecca, on the fields 2, 3, the storage area. Matt has contacted the previous owner of the property, and unfortunately, he couldn't be on the phone tonight because he has a Board of Health meeting for the town of Charlton. But the landowner has secured canceled checks, I believe, for the sale of hay from Field 1, and it's a matter of Matt securing copies of the canceled checks from the previous owner. So he'd like to have if it's possible, a continuation before you make a decision on Field 1, just so give him some extra time to get those checks and get them over to Becky.
Well, we've got the determination in front of us. If we're going to give a continuation, we may as well give it for the whole parcel. Becky, do you have any comment on that?
Well, that was discussed at the last meeting to have for this meeting. I mean, I guess it's up to you if you want to give a continuation. It is a request for determination of applicability, and with those, you should be making a determination on what information you have in front of you. I guess you guys can decide among yourselves if you want to give another 2-week extension to provide that additional information, but I thought that information was going to be provided for this meeting. I mean, based off...
Yeah, but the way this is written, it's not even, it doesn't say 11 Ladd Road and 30 Ladd Road. So, that's one subdivision.
Yeah.
If he has, we need pertinent, we need pertinent information on 11 Ladd Road to not issue a positive determination, right?
Say that again?
We
Can you
need
say that again?
positive information that has been farmed to not issue a positive determination on the 11 portion of it.
Correct.
So
Correct.
we either give them a continuation or we just issue a positive determination on the request for determination. Those are the two options. Mr. Barnacle, what would you like to do?
I recuse myself.
I'm sorry. I saw your face right up there in the middle. I'm sorry. Steve Chidesta.
Yeah, I would say we issue the positive determination and that we follow Rebecca's recommendation, and the negative determination for the agricultural fields up at the top.
All right. Eric?
This is Eric. On its face, I don't have a problem waiting 2 weeks for the information to come in, but I do distinctly remember requesting that information to be here for this meeting, and I don't really understand how in 2020 how difficult it would be to come up with canceled checks supposedly back just a few years in a 2-week period of time. So I myself are a little conflicted. I think we should work with people as best we can, but we also need to adhere to timelines. So I don't know how I'm going to vote.
Okay. Steve Haldeman?
Yeah, I think we should issue the positive determination now. On Field 11, I mean at 11 Ladd Road, and as Becky said, the others, 2, 3, and the ag storage are out of our jurisdiction anyway. So we definitely need to. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Jeff, do we have anybody that would like to speak from the audience?
We're checking, Mr. Chair.
Is anyone on the line for 30 Ladd Road? It's not.
No, sir. No one's on the line.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Steve Haldeman, so moved.
Do I have a
Stephen
second?
Chittister, I second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Steve Haldeman
Stephen
in
Chittister, I'm in
favor.
favor.
Eric?
Eric Gaspar, I'm in favor.
Ed Goodwin, I'm in favor. All right. Do I have a motion on 30 Ladd Road? Steve Haldeman?
This is Stephen Chittister. I make a motion that we make a positive determination on 11 Ladd Road and a negative determination on the 30 Ladd Road agricultural fields.
Do I have a
Steve
second?
Haldeman, with that motion.
Any discussion? All right. All in favor?
Steve Haldeman in favor.
Steve Chidester?
Stephen Chittister in favor.
Eric?
Eric Gaspar in favor.
And Ed Goodwin in favor. All right. So we have a positive determination on 30 Ladd Road.
Well, it's positive on the activities on 11, negative on activities on
right.
30.
Yep. Right.
Yep.
All right.
Can we discuss the forest cutting plan now for the town bylaws? Is that, or do I have to wait?
Really, it's not on this as a action item. If you,
Well, we do have it on the agenda.
well, we've got a 7 o'clock for 400 Haynes Street, and it's 7:08, 7:09. I'd like to just keep the meeting going if you'd like to. We can fit him in at the end.
Just so you're aware, our 7 o'clock is they did ask for a continuation, so.
Okay.
I can.
Well, then All right, well then, let's, 400 Haynes Street, notice of intent, DEP file number 300 TBD, continued from May 5th. ASLIP of Pilot Travel Center, LLC, application A. Roscoe of Core States Group, representative. Commercial redevelopment to include the demolition of the travel center, the convenience store, and the fuel pumping facilities on the construction of a new travel center, parking lot, and fuel pumping facilities. And that is a request for continuation.
Yes, and just so you're aware, the last meeting you did vote to move forward with the third-party review of the stormwater.
Right.
That is the request for continuation because that's being initiated, and we don't have an update at this time, and there still is no DEP file number issued for this either, so you're aware. They've
All right.
asked for a continuation request to our next meeting.
All right, so now you have Jim DeMeo coming back to discuss.
Do you want to vote on that approval of the request for continuation?
Yeah, that's true. Continuation. Mr. Barnacle, you want a continuation?
Yes, article in favor.
All right. Mr. Haldeman,
Steve Halderman in favor.
Mr. Chidester,
Stephen Chittister in favor.
and Eric Gasper,
Eric Gaspar in favor.
and Ed Goodwin in favor. All right, we are now 7-11, and we are going to discuss where is in the old business,
Well, it's under forest cutting plans.
Cutting plan.
the bottom. Yeah. All right. Okay. You're on.
Can I
Jim.
ask a quick question? This is Steve Halderman. Can I ask a pertinent first question about this?
About the forest cutting plan?
Yeah. Isn't the outcome of whether or not we determine that that is agriculture land will be pertinent to the forest, what would be allowed in a forest cutting plan?
Not necessarily.
So I can just chime in there. So the forest cutting plan initially included the agricultural areas, which DCR had them exclude. So those areas are not part of the forest cutting plan. In DCR's approval, they did say that there's no areas which will be converted to other uses is permitted under the forest cutting plan. So that has been revised since the first plan submittal. And there
You're
are
in
also,
concurrence with that, Jim, right?
Well, it was a labeling issue. I labeled the fields and the agricultural as not applicable to the cutting plan. DCR wanted me to use the words excluded. So I never intended to have any of the fields or the agricultural storage in the cutting plan that was not applicable to the forest cutting plan. But again, DCR insisted on using the word excluded from the cutting plan. So it was a semantics issue, but we resolved it. And the forest cutting that's proposed.
Excluded is pretty concise.
Yeah, not applicable. It was a little bit wordy, I guess. But we ironed that out. And candidly, the issue with the fields is separate from the cutting plan, and that's the way we'd like to deal with it.
All right. What else you have? You're
Okay.
you
I'll
said
explain
you had-
what I. This is basically a thinning from below, and the landowner wants to go in and take all the lowest quality trees and leave the largest, most valuable trees throughout the whole property. That's his intention. There is a number of water, wetlands, potential vernal pools. There's a few isolated wetlands. And what I did, I went out and I flagged and painted with a vertical stripe in blue flagging, the 50-foot buffer areas around vernal pools, the deep marsh, in streams, and and then as you go further south, where the deep marsh is, it's pretty steep, and there's a 100-foot buffer along that deep marsh because it's so steep. And DCR did measure to make sure I did it appropriately. And right, the only crossing is a wetland that's adjacent to Sturbridge Lane and the north end by the pike. It's an old road with an old culvert between the wetlands. But it's a very modest harvest. It's to maintain the large tree image. The only other issue is along the road, that road, there's a 50-foot visual buffer zone where only 50% of the basal area can be removed. I marked some example areas for the landowner and for DCR to see how it would look. And I've coordinated with the town tree warden on the how much right of way is along that road to make sure we're not cutting trees that are town disturbance trees. And so we're working with him on that.
Who is the town tree warden?
Well, it was Tom Chamberlain. I don't know the new guy. Tom Chamberlain's a friend of mine, but I don't know the. I left a note with the tree warden. And I haven't met him
Crane.
yet.
Tony Crane.
Tony Crane.
Thank you. So that's basically it. And we did flag. All 5 isolated wetlands are flagged. They're very small. I flagged 3 1/4. Glenn came out, checked my work, and I was not comfortable with the 4th one. And Glenn finished flagging the 4th and the small. There was another one adjacent to it. These are very small. They're isolated. One of them is a little bit more complex, and Glenn had to do some augering to determine the full extent of that isolated wetland. And that's in the red ink up along the north end of Ladd Road.
So, Jim, will those be excluded from the harvest area? Will they be able to put a filter strip around there?
Well, there's no trees within them actually, and they're going to be avoided. There really isn't very many resources in that area, but I can't imagine there would be many trees removed between the isolated wetland. I would recommend to Matt not to cut any trees within that area because there's nothing there to begin with. There's just all small diameter elm, maple, red maple, firewood trees. But within the isolated wetland, there's no harvesting.
There's no trees.
Okay. Yeah.
There's no trees. That's right. And Matt knows. I've worked with Matt before in another project, and he is very careful about utilizing his equipment in wet soils. And of course, it's his property. I'm sure that he's not going to do something that's not very responsible out there.
All right. Any comments from the commissioners? Mr. Barnacle.
Recused on 11.
Recused on 11? Okay. Mr. Haldeman, you went out there.
Well, everything that Jim's saying makes sense. So, like I say, I was out there, and I agree with the approach here.
Okay. Eric.
No question.
And Stephen.
Yeah, I don't have any comments other than, did Becky have anything to say about the forest cutting plan?
Yeah, I have a couple comments.
Okay, thanks.
Ed, do you want me to comment now, or would you like to
Go ahead. Yeah,
proceed with your comments?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I was just going to go over, I guess, right, some of what the changes were the addition of those isolated wetlands. The plan does say that there's no harvesting in wetlands. Typically, when we look at the forest cutting plans, anything that's a isolated wetland, especially something that could be a potential vernal pool habitat, the commission typically looks for a filter strip with some limited selective clearing, I guess, within that filter strip. So something that you can consider that you've requested that in the past. There is an area with a potential vernal pool identified down here. It does appear to have a filter strip on it as well. I guess we just kind of highlight the sensitivity of some of those areas and just make sure we have conformance that they won't be going within the isolated wetlands, and maybe can add that filter strip there. There are some pretty steep slopes on the property. This is something that we discussed before. Skid roads were added to the plan that weren't originally on there. They have to follow BMPs within the plan. I think that due to the steepness of the slope and kind of sensitivity of resource area, it might not be a bad idea to have some additional oversight on the plan. I know that DCR does do site visits, et cetera, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to have some additional oversight. And I think
How would
that
we do
covers
that?
most of. Well, we had a recent forest cutting plan that Halterman and I looked at and provided comment to the Board of Selectmen. We just made a request for some additional oversight to ensure, no impact to resource areas due to the sensitivity of that project site.
Okay.
And other reasons.
What was that?
Yeah, Becky, around the two potential vernal pools, there is a 50-foot buffer strip, no cutting. It's flagged and painted.
All right.
I thought the town vernal pool buffer strip was 200 feet. I thought that was part of our bylaw.
It is. Logging,
Under the bylaw.
yeah.
This is Stephen Chittister. Now that I've heard Becky's comments, I want to agree with that I'd like to see some additional oversight of the cutting to make sure that things are handled properly.
Is that a motion, Stephen?
Sure.
Do I have a second?
Steve
to that?
Hoffman, I would second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor, Mr. Barnacle?
Used.
Mr. Gasper?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Approved.
Stephen Haldeman?
Steve Halterman, I approve.
Stephen Chidester?
Stephen Chittister, I approve.
And Ed Goodwin, I approve. Thanks, Jim.
Hey, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Goodbye.
Hi. We are now at 715-52 Stallion Hill Road. Notice of intent DEP number 300-1061, continued from May 5th. Town of Sturbridge, Tommy Chamberlain. Trails Committee, Mark Farrell. Green Hill Engineering, representing proposed Riverlands parking area and Grand Trunk Trail access. All right. Hi, Mark. Hi, Tommy.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah. Becky, you want to start off?
Tom, do you want to? Or I was going to let Tom. Do you want to take the lead and discuss the revisions you guys have made since the last meeting and items that you've submitted, and then I can comment on those?
Are Ed and Glenn on, Becky?
Yeah.
They would be calling in on the.
They're on. They're on.
They're on. Okay.
Becky,
Oh,
can
good.
you turn off the prior application from your screen?
Oh, yep.
Just stop sharing your screen.
You have some visuals.
Okay.
I do have some visuals to put up.
Okay, that's fine.
You want me to put the plans
Yep,
up?
go ahead. Yep.
Just ask who is it.
Hello, is anyone here for 52 Stallion Hill?
Glenn Colburn from Opakam Land Trust. And Ed Hertz will take Land Trust.
Thank you.
Yeah, turn it up a little bit. Just turn it up.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
All right, so I have 3 different plan sheets here. This is the overview one if you want to start here, Tom.
Yeah, I gotta just turn. Actually, Becky, if you probably can go to the plan that shows the parking lot in a little better detail, because I think that's really where most of the changes and the discussion is probably going to be focused. So anyway, this is the revised parking lot plan to comply with the stormwater management. We removed the infiltration trench that's located in the center of the parking lot and located it to the southeast corner, just outside the parking lot as a detention basin and stormwater management. And the grading of the parking lot has been regraded to allow sheet flow all down towards that corner. So there were some minor grade changes put in to address that, and a detention stormwater management basin put in the lower corner. As to the particular details how it was designed, I'll defer to Mark to answer those specifically. If the commission has any questions. Let's see, so that, by doing that, that moved the stormwater management completely out of the 200 foot riverfront area. And so now actually it is outside of the jurisdictional, including the 200 foot wetland strip, I believe. So we've made that as a positive change. We've addressed in other areas that, again, as we mentioned previously, the parking lot is in a disturbed area, and we feel that by the work that has already been done and the additional work that will take place in the removal of the telephone poles, the concrete, the bricks, and there are a few invasive plants in that area, so we'll be removing those, and that'll be an improvement within the riverfront area. Outside of that, I think basically our plan has stayed the same. Those were the major changes we made to the plans.
Becky?
Okay. Yep. So right. So last meeting there was a couple things that needed to be addressed, some additional information, some clarification. Since that meeting, we've received these revised plans. They did modify the parking lot stormwater, and then they've also updated their narrative and provided some alternative analysis, which was discussed last time. So kind of breaking this down, looking at the parking lots within the outer riparian, and just like a small portion to work within the outer buffer zone. So the portion of the parking lot that's an existing driveway and developed area with the sheds, et cetera, and some is formally disturbed already. So the stormwater system was revised, and as Tom said, it was moved outside of riparian area, and was also revised to include a sediment forebay trench because this is a kind of gravel surface here. So I think that's a good improvement. There was a narrative with that included for how they believe that meets their standards. I would recommend that we just we could include a condition for an O&M for just kind of the yearly or bi-yearly maintenance that the engineer might recommend that they might need to do to clean that structure out. Moving to the trail, as we know, a majority of this trail is sited to follow an existing gas line and cart road. Portions of the trail are sited within inner and outer riparian areas, and within 25 to 50 feet of buffer zone of a resource area. We did talk about, the trail location. And, because it's within the existing cart road and gas pipeline, having the trail in that location would minimize additional disturbance if the trail was maybe shifted a little bit further from the wetland edge or tried to move out of side of the inner riparian area. So, as you come off of Stallion Hill Road there, the trail will be within the footprint of the gas line, and then as it curves by the parking lot, there is an area there that's not within the cart road or in the gas pipeline, but it is part of what that previous disturbance, I guess, would be there. Not that it's disturbed right now, but you can tell that there's a lot of young pine saplings growing up there, that it was kind of an open area at one time. So it would only require the removal of some small pines there. So portions of the trail, reviewing the wetland regulations, there are provisions for limited projects that would allow trails to be within riparian areas, provided you look at your alternative analysis and there's certain provisions that you meet. I think that because we have the existence of the gas line here, it would make sense to site the trail there versus kind of looking at between the parking lot and where the gas line is, and adding that new disturbance. And, the plan does show what work would be required for that base of the trail to be put down. And I guess Tom can go over that a little bit more, but it seems like it's minimal work because the gas line is existing.
Right.
In
it's
addition,
minimal work for the gas line basically complies with the ADA grade, so there's no digging. We're just going to remove the live vegetation, the growing grass, down to the soil and any large organic, wood debris, branches, etc. Place the soil stabilization fabric down, that's 12 feet wide, and then install the gravel on top of that, and loam and seed any edges to blend back into the grass. So the trail will be built that way. One of the alternatives we looked at was continuing the trail along the shoulder and edge of Stallion Hill Road to the driveway of the parking lot. That would require and all of that work, or for a good portion of that work, would be within the 200 riverfront area. That would require tree removal, excavation of stumps, and some grade slope changes, so we could get the trail in and address the road runoff and drainage. Because currently all there is a raw shoulder there. There's no actual road drainage. So by installing any kind of trail or walkway, we would need to be addressing that. So using that alternative would actually be more construction, more soil disturbance, more tree removal than the proposal that's before the commission now.
Thanks, Tom.
All right. Mark, you?
Yeah, basically just concur with what Becky and Tom said, is that the trails along that existing gas pipeline, the whole area was a gravel bank at one time, so what you're seeing there for vegetation mostly is early successional growth of pines and just a thick bush, a thick grove of pine trees, white pine growing in there. And the trail, except for the one portion in the northwest corner or the northern corner of the parking lot, is along an existing cart path or along the gas pipeline. And the stormwater we did is we just graded the parking lot towards the south end, and pretty much now no water leaves the site where the parking lot is, and that's going to be the case afterwards. So there'll be no discharge of any stormwater to a wetland resource area. It's just going to all stay in that little basin as it is now. and just off to the south, just allow it to infiltrate back into the soil there.
Okay. All right.
So just to-
What?
I was just going to say, I mean, based off of all of those reasons with the existing site and the nature of the project and trying to reuse some of these existing areas, I wouldn't anticipate a significant impact to resource areas for this project. I think that they've gone through and demonstrated some alternative analysis, and I think it would make sense to follow the existing cart road and gas line.
Okay.
That's all. And I do have revised impact calculations too for the file.
All right. Mr. Barnacle?
I'm fully in favor of the plan as it exists.
All right. Steve Chidester. Steven.
I'm in favor of the project.
Mr. Haldeman?
Yeah, I'm in favor of the project. I want to say, though, that when Tom and I were out on Saturday, and I thank you again, Tom, for giving me a personalized tour, I don't know how much of an issue the part of the trail that is right where it comes into Stallion Hill Road is over in the 25-foot no-touch zone. Is that going to be an issue? To me, standing out there on Stallion Hill, dodging cars, the option, there is an option to take it out of that 25-foot, but there would be three oak trees, I think, and a couple of oak trees and a big pine that would have to be cut down. But that is a possibility. I don't know how much of an issue that 25-foot is going to be on this. It's obviously going to be easier because there's already a cleared area there.
So yes, Steve and I did look at that option. Steve, what I'd draw to your attention is that moving that little piece does get some of the trail out of the 25-foot buffer. I calculated it at approximately 120 square feet that we're currently encroaching inside the 25-foot. And as you may recall, we counted about 9 trees that would need to be removed to relocate the trail. And again, because we're dealing with good-sized trees and trying to get an ADA trail in per our master plan, we'd have to be removing those stumps. So again, and that would all be, for most of that work, that would be incurring within the 50-foot zone, between the 25 and 50-foot. So yeah, we could move it, but I think soil disturbance-wise, vegetation-wise, that's much more of a negative than leaving it in the area where we're currently proposing it.
This is Steve Halderman again. I wasn't strongly proposing that. I was throwing that out as an option if at this meeting the 25-foot piece got into a serious problem. Just to point that out, but it doesn't appear that it's an issue, Tom. So I don't have a problem with staying where it is.
I'm Dave Barnacle. It's one of the reasons for the alternative analysis in the first place, and that was one of the reasons why Tom and Mark had to take another look at it.
Steve Chidester?
Yeah, I already commented. I'm good.
Did you? Eric, did you comment?
I didn't. I'm okay with the plan.
The one thing I didn't, this is a good one. I didn't,
so say I'm fine with the plan.
I didn't see anything, did we put the bollards in? Because I noticed in Glenn's report that was one of the things that OPACOM had requested, and I remember that as a discussion within when we were working on what we were going to do here back, when we were trying to figure out the conservation easements. Is that going to be something that's going to be in at the 4 corners of that space?
We'll definitely be placing some type of traffic control, vehicle control, so vehicles obviously just don't turn off of Stallion Hill Road onto the trail. As past practice in town, we have not used bollards. We have used natural large stones and just set them such that the gap between the stones maintains the minimum ADA requirements for clearance. And that's been our past practice, although installing bollards, a more commercial looking bollard, that can be done. But I would suggest we have plenty of stones, and given the resource of Old Sturbridge Village directly across the street, I think stones would be much more natural looking than bollards. But if the commission has a preference, there's no problem one way or the other.
Well, I don't believe the commission has a preference. I was just addressing the issue of Opacum's concern. They'll probably tell you, but it would be my opinion that they just want to make sure that you stick to the 1 acre.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about control of the trail. As to the 1 acre, I've had discussions and submitted the plans to our town administrator, and he's currently reviewing them, and has told me that his plan is once he gets up to speed on this project and what the CR requires, he'll be in touch with Opacum directly so that we can sit down and decide how we're going to delineate the 1 acre.
All right. Jeff, do we have any visitors that would like to speak?
There are.
Yes, Glenn.
Go ahead, Opacum.
Hello?
Go ahead, Opacum.
Yes, hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Glenn Colburn from Opacum Land Trust. Can you hear me okay?
You on speakerphone, Glenn?
Yes, I am. No, I'm on my phone. I am not on speaker. I'm not
okay,
on
all
speaker.
right. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. It's cutting out a little bit. I had a few concerns and questions, if I might. The alternatives analysis that we had requested. I appreciate Tom, bringing us up to speed with the alternate access from Stallion Hill using the old road. That could be a good consideration. That was one that Opacum had talked about because it would eliminate a lot of the work within the inner riparian zone. Other than that, I didn't see any sort of alternatives laid out or planned out that would get that bike trail, the spur, I'll call it, out off of the gas pipeline. That seems to be our major hang-up on this project. It does seem to have a lot of, in our opinion, unnecessary intrusion into the riverfront area. We think we can accomplish the same thing by using the back of the parking lot as access to the trail. At this point, we don't have a lot of bike traffic coming up to this part of the Grand Trunk Trail. I know that's the future plan, but it's taken us many years to get to this point for another 2,000 feet. I'm wondering if we could maybe postpone the spur trail a little bit until it's actually needed. I've seen the trails on the Novotuck Rail Trail, which I'm sure some of you have seen before, and their parking lots have access similar to what Opacum is proposing. People unload their bikes within the parking lot, pedal over to the beginning of the trail, and they're off. This spur trail, the way it's designed right now, I don't envision it getting very much use. It is unnecessary at this time. I'd also like to talk about the difference between previously developed riverfront area and degraded riverfront area. We seem to be using this interchangeably, and I would agree that, you know, the proposed gravel parking area, it has seen spotty dumping, and it's, you know, topsoil's been removed. But I would take a look at, you know, the other parts of this project, and especially along the pipeline. And I would disagree that these are degraded areas. To be degraded, we need the topsoil would have to be removed, the impervious surfaces, and then, of course, you know, the spotty dumping in junkyards certainly is a degraded area. But I bring your attention to the pipeline in particular. As you walk along the pipeline, it's heavily vegetated, so it's a pervious surface. It has topsoil. Things are growing well there. The only reason we don't have trees there is because of the vegetation management plan that is keeping the brush and the woody growth from on top of the pipeline. But if you look on either side of the pipeline, along the spur trail, there are magnificent pine trees there that have been there a long time. In our opinion, it's not a degraded area, and it shouldn't be treated that way. It should, if anything, it should, if you do consider it a previously developed area, I think you should look at the requirements for redevelopment in 1058.5, which states that you should do everything possible to keep things at least 100 feet away from the river, basically stay out of the inner riparian zone, and no work should be closer than the previously disturbed area, which in our opinion would be the gravel borrow area where the parking lot is going. But it seems like the spur trail itself is not in a degraded area. It is a pipeline, but it doesn't meet the definition of a degraded area. So I think, again, you know, Opacum would strongly encourage the commission to look at that spur trail and ask, you know, is it in a degraded area? Is it serving a purpose for wildlife? It is nice edge habitat. It's not impervious. The same purpose for this development, for this plan, can be achieved by just using an entrance off of the gravel parking lot in the back, and that would eliminate any concerns that Opacum would have. The rest of the project along the gravel road and sections of the pipeline seem totally reasonable, but the spur just seems, you know, superfluous for the project. Thank you.
Ed, if I could just quickly comment on some of that.
Yeah, let me see if Ed Hood's there, if he wants to comment, and then we'll bring it back.
Sure.
They've been sitting out there waiting.
No, well, I'm deferring to Glenn as an authority on this. The spur trail is nice. I think, as Glenn referred to the Barnacle Rail Trail, you know, access can be gained from Stanley Hill Road on the proposed drive into the parking lot, and bikers can then access the trail from the back end. So all the work that we're concerned about at this point is the spur trail because it's within the buffer zone. So that's why we're questioning the need for that much work in that buffer zone.
Can I, Ed, this is Ed Goodwin. Ed and Glenn, you're talking about an elimination, which I'm not completely clear on. But my question to you is, do you have a recommendation on other than not doing it, what could correct what we're talking about?
Well, we did, this is Glenn speaking, we did say in one of our letters that elimination of the spur could be accomplished and we would still have access from the back of the parking lot. At this time, it just doesn't seem like that spur would get much use. People are driving into the parking lot, unloading the bikes, and they're getting right on the trail from the back of the parking lot. They're not going back out onto Stallion Hill. And until the Grand Trunk goes through the Turtle Hurdle area that we're all familiar with and links up with Westville, I'm not quite sure that we're going to really utilize this spur trail. And in fact, wouldn't we be better off just extending the end of the trail further into the Riverlands, where it would get more use than the spur?
So have you done any studies of what we're going to be looking at for bikes? Have you done anything that would come to us with information that says we don't need it, other than perhaps we could wait on that?
No, other than seeing that the design that the state has done on the Norwood Tuck Rail Trail, I have not done any studies as to how much traffic this is going to get. I don't know if Tom could give us those numbers, or how many people are driving or pedaling up to this point and will need to utilize that spur trail to get on. It's not to say that sometime in the future we may want to revisit this and look at it again if it becomes necessary. But right now, it just seems like it's a major intrusion into both the inner and the outer riparian zone that could be avoided through different planning. I noticed that within the parking lot, the infiltration basin got moved. Is it possible that we could, instead of having the infiltration, where the infiltration basin was, could we run a designated bikeway through the middle of the parking lot, utilizing signs or a raised crosswalk to slow traffic? Again, it would accomplish the same goal, and it would eliminate a lot of work in the inner and outer riparian zones.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Barnacle?
I have a problem with the whole premise of not agreeing to do it now, but waiting until there's a demand for it and then trying to get it through Opacum then. Opacum is not in favor of it now. Sure as heck they're not going to be in favor of it a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. And yet this is all part of the Grand Trunk Trail extension that's going from Franklin, Mass, all the way out to Western Mass. What we're supposed to be able to do is work with it. We came up with an alternative. The alternative seemed to be perfectly reasonable. Come back now and say, oh, well, what you really should do is change your parking lot again, because maybe in the future we'll want to be able to go back and make another change. I think we have to solve the problem now. And I don't see it as a problem, frankly. I think that it was a good exchange that Mark and Tom came up with in being able to rebalance this thing.
Tommy?
Yeah, just a couple comments. Obviously, I appreciate the concerns of Opacum, but I'm also, I would say that right now where the spur does exit onto Stallion Hill Road, literally 50 feet down and across the street is the sidewalk that brings people out to Route 20. So, what's missing is something like this that allows people to use the sidewalk and walk to the trail and access the trail from businesses and places along Route 20. That sidewalk is already in place along Stallion Hill Road out to Route 20. The other thing is, I think the commission is well aware as the problems we had at the Heinz Farm parking lot We built a parking lot that was, you know, we thought adequate at the time, and we have just, you know, literally more than doubled it in size. You know, because the demand was there even before, you know, all of this COVID-19 stuff hit, and now the parking lot is again too small, you know, for our use. The other issue is if we do not have the spur trail from the end of the existing sidewalk on Stallion Hill Road to the driveway, to the parking lot, as I mentioned previously, there is absolutely there is no drainage control structures. It's just a raw shoulder. And again, to get the type of trail in, we'd be looking at a significant increase in cost and disturbance, all within the 200-foot riverfront area. So, again, looking at all the alternatives, I think we've put something before the commission that environmentally gets it done today, as Mr. Barnacle says, and does it in the least obtrusive way within the riverfront area.
Mr. Farrell, you want to weigh in on this also?
I just have a couple comments. One is trying to locate the trail on the southern end of the property, the parking lot where the proposed basin is for stormwater. Those slopes are very steep. They're 1-to-1, and trying to get a 12-foot wide or a 15-foot wide trail in there, you would have to put in retaining walls in order to hold back the soil. So we did the parking area. We tried to minimize the cuts and the fills and the tuck it in the existing area without disturbing those very steep existing slopes. The second thing is I ride my bike, and if you were coming from the trails behind Old Sturbridge Village, you would come behind the village and up this road, and that would be a natural entrance. So I think until the trails are fully connected, I think people are going to use that. If they're coming from somewhere else in Sturbridge, they'll just hop right on that trail, and it's much nicer than trying to have to navigate your bike through parking lots where people are getting in and out, and it just makes more sense to me to put it there. And there's no, Glenn had mentioned there were a big stand of mature pine trees. If you would be going down the trail, they would be off to the right, and those would not be disturbed. Neither the trees would be disturbed nor the roots to put this in.
Okay. Steve Chidester?
Yeah, so I appreciate OPECOM's concerns, and I'm looking at this in a slightly different light now, but I guess I still agree with the plan as it's presented, assuming that there aren't any large trees that are going to be removed in order to put that trail in, that spur trail.
Eric?
Yeah, Eric Ashbar, at risk of agreeing too much with David Barnacle. Glenn kind of had me until the comment where, well, if we need to go back in for demand to put it in after the fact, that just seems unnecessary. And it seems like too much of a risk, and it seems like that would cause more additional cost and disturbance for a likely need in the future. So I'm still good with the plan as drawn up.
Mr. Halterman?
Yeah, I had, oddly enough, all these discussions with Tom when I was out there, and I was concerned about the big trees along the right side, and Tom was showing me how the trail the trail would be built on pushed way over to the left, so none of those trees would be cut. But clearly, there's two different uses here that are at play. One is if you come in a car with your bike, and you park and take your bike off and then take off from the back of the parking lot, that's perfect. But if you think in terms of the Grand Trunk and people coming down from another place, either on foot or walking, you don't want to be on the side of Stallion Hill Road. Tom and I, how many times do we have to kind of like jump off the road because it's a very narrow road, a lot of traffic. And if you did not have that spur and you had to go that extra, what is that, a couple of 100 feet before you got into the parking lot, if you were just on your bike or walking, then that would be a problem. If you were going to extend the road a little bit to put in a bike trail or a walking trail, a lane we'll call it, it just drops straight down and there's big trees. So I was finally convinced that that this plan is acceptable to me.
Becky, you have anything further to say?
I don't have any additional comment.
Ed, Glenn?
Motion to.
Yeah, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, well, thanks. I want to just thank the commission for all of the thought you've put into this design. Obviously, you've thought about the different impacts of the different designs and everything, and how useful this spur trail is going to be to you. And I appreciate your time and effort. I know the Sturbridge Conservation Commission does an excellent job as working with you guys for 5 years. I know that you put a lot of thought and effort into all your work. And if this project is acceptable to the commission and can pass the performance standards of the Riverfront Act, then Opakam doesn't want to get in the way at all of trail development. We thought we saw a alternative that might be less impact, but as you've all mentioned, with the future access and the crowds that will be coming here, if you feel that this is necessary for the town, then Opakam, I'm sure, will support you with that. Thanks a lot, fellas. I appreciate all your work on this. And you too, Becky. Thank you.
We have a real reason also to be able to make the modification from the Opakam subject, which was to put bollards in. Tom indicated that we'd rather put rocks in because all of us know that here in New England, the rocks are going to get bigger, so they'll do an even better job. The bollards are just going to stay the same size the whole time.
Well, I think, Dave, what we wanted was not so much bollards or rocks on the trail entrances, but a delineation of the building envelope, some sort of idea of pins out there for the building envelope.
Yeah, monumentation.
That's what they were.
And that's what we talked about, Glenn, back when.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're going to work on that. I've got it with the town administrator, and we'll be in touch.
You stick COVID on the front of it, then I'll have to look at it.
Mr. Chairman, would you like to have, oh no, we can't have a motion to close the public hearing because Jeff still has some input to put into it.
Okay.
No.
No? Jeff?
Aren't we still waiting for something from Jeff?
No, we're not. The marking of the 1 acre envelope, I'm not sure how that would relate under the Wetlands Protection Act.
I make a motion that we close the public hearing. Dave Barnacle.
Eric Gaspar, second.
Any discussion on closing the public hearing? All in favor? David?
David Barnacle in favor.
Steve?
Steve Halterman in favor.
Stephen?
Stephen Chittister in favor.
Eric?
Eric Gaspar in favor.
And Ed Goodwin in favor.
Make a motion to approve the plan as indicated on the screen at the present time, and I can't see the date. Becky can include the date with this motion. David Barnacle.
Do I have a second?
Eric Gaspar,
Steve
second.
Halterman. Okay, fine.
Tommy, you can't second it. Okay, so I've got Steve Altman and Eric Gaspar we can pick for a second. Discussion. Seeing no discussion, all in favor. Mr. Barnacle?
David Barnacle in favor.
Steve Alderman?
Steve Halterman in favor.
Steve Chidester?
Stephen Chittister in favor.
Eric Gaspar?
Eric Gaspar in favor.
And Ed Goodwin in favor. Thanks, gentlemen. Becky, we
Thank
are...
you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Good
Have a
evening.
good evening.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate your help.
So we are now at 7:30. Well, I missed it. It's 187 Shepherd Road. Request for determination of applicability. Mark Farrell, owner. Mark Farrell of Green Hill Engineering. Installation of a new driveway, drainage improvements, and regrading above the septic system.
Ed, if I may, this is Mark Farrell.
Yep.
I'm not the owner.
It's
I was wondering, I
E.
was going to ask
Farrell.
you that.
Sorry, it just says Farrell, but it's E. Farrell, owner.
E. Farrell, okay.
Just happens to be a coincidence to have the same last name.
It's one of your kids?
No.
No.
You're lucky. If
I just wanna,
it was me, it'd be one of my kids.
I just want
Go
to
ahead,
state for the
Mark.
record that they have, I'm just going to state for the record they provided proof of the legal ad and a butter notification for the public hearing.
Okay, great.
Go ahead, Mark.
Basically, this was this is Mark Farrell. This was a job I did a couple years ago for repair of a septic system. The house was sold. The new owners moved in and started to do some work, and the Conservation Commission became aware and basically told them to stop in the file, and that's basically what this plan is. So what they want to do is to regrade the front of the house between Shepherd Road and where the cursor is, and because before it was a pretty steep driveway coming down, and this way they'll have a more level approach to the house and have a gravel parking area up there. The second thing they wanted to do is the final grading of the septic system resulted in a little bit of a low spot above the septic system. And what happens is as water comes around Shepherd Road, you can see how the actual edge of pavement cuts into this property a little bit. The water drains off into the property and pools or ponds in that little spot down there. So they just want to regrade that so that the water will just, it comes off the road, will just continue across the property and not pond there. And so that's basically what they would like to do. After this, they file this. They did go and stabilize the site. They put erosion control. They have straw wattles that start up near the house and go all the way down to where Shepherd Road makes the turn in the area where the septic system is.
Good. Becky?
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I think Mark covers most of the activities out here. I mean, I did go out and I was made aware of the project and did talk to the property owners, and they were responsive with getting the RDA in as we requested. Just one other thing with the project is you can see where the cursor is. There's a catch basin in the road, but there's a stream that comes off the other side, and that's carried in this pipe right here that comes down and feeds into this wetland here. So one thing they were proposing to do originally was tie the perimeter drain from the house into the culvert, which now they're doing a subsurface drain, which won't be connected into the culvert. But the only thing I thought was that because it's being discharged right on top of the culvert, it might be better in case of concerns of erosion and issues there and washing out into the wetland, if that could just be curved and kind of outlet over here, maybe into the forested area, just so that way, and I talked to DPW about it too, because they were aware of this because they had asked to tie into the pipe here. He thought that would be good too, because that is their structure, I believe, that carries down there. So that's the one recommendation I would make, and then I just don't know too, I know some of the grading was already done here, it's just that they obviously will have to be very cautious of that pipe there. Otherwise, I don't see any concerns with that. I think you can issue a determination and add some conditions in while they do the work, have them revegetated. All of that is existing yard area, so it can be lawn or landscaped. The stone wall, which is where the wattles are here, kind of defines the edge of existing yard and forested area. And that's all I have.
David?
Mark, how much grading are you going to have to do south of where the septic system is at the present time?
How much grading?
Yeah. You indicated you wanted to regrade it so that there would be no ponding, but there'd be sheet flow.
There would be very little. I think you'd have to bring the grade up maybe 6 or 12 inches, probably not even 12 inches. So there's not significant grading at all, and the slopes really, the slope's not going to change either. So if anything, it'll level it out more so that it's, or slightly pitch it away from that low spot. But the grades won't change significantly, and I don't really see any impact. Below it is the septic system, and it's just.
Is it going to be graded more toward that small stream bed, so that the flow is going to be moving in that direction? That's exactly it.
Yeah, I don't know whether they could probably. I think that's probably where naturally the water wants to run. So it's probably the below the septic towards Shepherd Road is going uphill. So to direct the water, you might be able to direct a portion that way and a portion, to the north of the septic system.
What I'm worried about, Mark, is we've been getting increasingly stronger storms.
Yeah.
Get 1.5 inch drop or a 2 inch drop.
Right.
Without having a good system, the sheet flow is not going to work.
Yeah. Well, I was concerned when they put this thing in, and I told them they had to, manage the water because it comes off of Shepherd Road, and they successfully did. So they've not had a problem in the last 2 to 3 years, and there was significant more exposed soil putting in the septic system than this little bit of grading would be.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a lot.
Yeah, when the septic was in, it was wide open, and I told them, you just got to watch that water coming off. And now that the area's been revegetated, it's able to take whatever comes off the road, those super storms, if you will, and not have any problems. So I think the area below is stabilized already, and they've not had a problem yet. I wouldn't anticipate they would have a problem by doing this grading.
I think one of the things we'll have to do is to make certain that in the order of conditions, Becky, that 6 to 12 inches of additional material is going to be placed. We want to make sure that there's a very good reseeding program going on very quickly to the application of that regrading.
Okay. Mr. Haldeman?
Yeah, I think that the fact that when you talk about regrading, that you're adding material as opposed to flattening out and making more exposed soil, I think that's good. But you definitely, and you know this as well as us, probably better, that does have to be stabilized really quickly. And maybe throw some rye in there that's going to pop up, even if it was annual rye. Anyway, yeah, I agree with this plan. I think it's good.
Stephen?
Are there any trees to be removed, Mark?
No trees to be removed.
Okay. I'm okay.
Eric?
I'm good.
Ed Goodwin, what?
This is Mark Farrell. If I may, it's Mark Farrell. If I may add something?
Go ahead.
In regards to Dave's concern about the water going across there, it might be prudent just to put some straw wattles at the edge of pavement, just to direct the water further down the road and to the south of the septic system during construction.
Okay.
And then that would just give it some more, instead of having that water that would normally be going over there ponding, just, have it continue on its way past where that low spot is and then just dip into the woods to the south of the septic system.
I have no problem with that. That's the way it always went.
Yes.
Yeah. So I have no problem with the plan either. Do I have anybody in the audience? Jeff?
We're checking, sir. Hold on. One second.
Yep. It's 187 Shepherd.
Hi, is there anyone on the line for 187 Shepherd? No.
No, sir. No one's on the line.
Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Move, David Barnacle.
A second. Steve
Eric
Alderman.
Gaspar.
All right. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? David?
David Barnacle in favor.
Steve Halterman?
Steve Halterman in favor.
Stephen Chedesta?
Stephen Chittister in favor?
And Eric Gasper?
Eric Gaspar in favor.
Ed Goodwin in favor. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the plan with the modifications indicated by engineer Mr. Farrell. David Barnacle.
Do I have a second?
Can I add to that, Ed?
Yes.
So are we, so Becky's suggestion was that the discharge from the roof, I guess, would be directed into the woods as opposed to connected into that pipe?
That's correct.
Okay.
It would
I
be
just wanted to
turned.
make sure what we were approving.
Yeah.
And also,
Yeah.
I like Mark's suggestion of adding the straw wattles to redirect the flow during construction.
But actually, Mr. Chairman, as a matter of protocol, shouldn't the motion be seconded before we have the discussion?
I thought it was.
Yeah, I second it. Eric Gaspar.
Thank you.
I don't know if I believe him, but thanks, Eric.
Thank you very much, Eric.
Yeah.
You know how quiet I am.
Yeah. Okay, so
Ed?
any other discussion? All in favor?
I just wanted to add.
Okay,
Can
go ahead, Beth.
sorry. It's a determination, so it's you would be voting on a negative number 3 and a positive
-3.
number 5 with conditions.
Yep.
Okay, great. And the
David Barnacle in
motion,
favor.
Steve?
Steve Halterman in favor.
In favor?
Stephen Chittister in favor?
Eric?
Eric Gaspar in favor.
And Ed Goodwin in favor. Okay, negative number 3, positive number 5. And we are through. And Becky, where do you want to go now?
We can go to letter permits.
All right.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good
Take
evening.
care, Mark. I thought you were moving into my neighborhood, Mark. I'm disappointed now.
I'm firmly entrenched on Lead Mine Pond. I'm not going to go anywhere.
Okay.
Mark, before you leave, on behalf of the Conservation Commission, I'd like to thank you for the work that you did for the Trails Committee with that parking lot issue, which has taken several months to be able to get through, and I appreciate your patience and diligence.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Yep.
I
Thank you very much.
enjoyed working on it, and we'll enjoy continuing to work on it.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Good point,
I don't
David.
have a visual.
Yeah.
don't have a visual for this letter permit, but I do have visuals for the next things to discuss. So we have a tree removal request for 2 Cedar Lake Drive. I had been out there previously when we had the enforcement order. Ed Goodwin did a site visit last week. They were requesting 2 trees to be removed, 2 large red oaks, one a double stem near the lake. Ed did look at them. We did request an arborist report as the trees weren't dead, but we did indicate that there was one of the stems that could be removed outside of the arborist report. I did hear from the property owner today that they would like to move forward with just the removal of that one stem, and then just do some limbing of dead branches on the other trees.
Great.
So I don't see any concerns with that. I just want to share that, and you can vote on that, or if you have any other questions.
Barnacle in favor of a consensus.
Mr. Halterman?
Steve Halterman in favor of the consensus.
Stephen Chidester?
So just to be clear, we're just approving one half of this double stem tree, right?
The dead half.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Stephen Chittister in favor.
Yeah. Eric?
Eric Gaspar in favor.
And Ed Goodwin in favor.
All right.
Special permit?
Moving on. Yep, special permit. This is for the use of the Plimpton property from the Hamilton Rod and Gun Club. This is their annual archery, R100 3D archery shoot notification that they do. We did receive this prior to everything with COVID-19 happening. It's my understanding that they're probably still proceeding with this event. So the dates for this are June 26th through June 28th of 2020. It's the same event that they've been doing on the property, where they set up different targets and just have to do some kind of minimal, shrub clearing from growth from the previous year. That's all within kind of the existing use areas that they've been using off of their trails. We kind of went over a lot of it in detail last year. I didn't think that he needed to attend when we previously discussed this, because there was no raised concerns with the plan last year. I don't have any concerns with it. The only thing is, looking at what the dates are and with the governor's orders, my only recommendation is that they obviously comply on our property with any current orders that are issued regarding public participation and limitations and things of that nature. They did reach out to Opakam Land Trust, and a memorandum of agreement had been sent over to them from Opakam Land Trust.
Strangely enough, this is one of those activities where you actually can do the 6-foot separation, because it's a solo activity. Each one of the people works on their own with bows and arrows against the targets. The targets are typically set up by one man who loads them all into a Jeep and then runs them around and places them, and then afterwards goes back and takes them up. I think they fully could comply with the governor's requirements. I'm fully in favor of this. Again, this will be the 3rd year or 4th year.
Good. Steve, you in favor?
Steve Halterman, I'm in favor.
Stephen Chidester?
Stephen Chittister in favor.
And Eric Gaspar?
Eric Gaspar in favor.
And Ed Goodwin in favor. Great. Thanks,
All right,
Becky.
thank you. Yep.
What's next, Beck?
Shuffling through my papers here. Hold on. All right. Next in line, in old business, we already did 36 Goodrich Road, 9 Holland Road. We have 65 Clock Road, and that's actually what I have on my screen here. This is a property where there was some work occurring on the backside of this wetland. Some of it historic, some of it current. They had a greenhouse and some structures back there, mowing up to the edge of the wetland, and a little bit of leaf lawn clipping dumping into the resource area. So the property owner came in, I believe this was in February, worked out kind of discussion about moving the greenhouse structure, and doing some restoration in the backside of the wetland. So that's what you see in front of you here. This is their proposal. You can see their greenhouse structure has been moved back near where their other structure is here. He is proposing a mix of serviceberry and dogwood trees scattered throughout this area as proposed restoration of the backside, which is what was asked for at that time, and that is the complete 25-foot buffer zone of what they're showing. I think that this plan addresses the concerns that you raised at the last meeting they came to and what you requested from them. Right. I would recommend that if you approve this, that, we just send them a letter, obviously saying, that it's approved, and maybe setting a timeline on trying to get this plan implemented, as it's been some of it's been ongoing concerns back there, and make sure that it gets addressed and doesn't get left on the sidelines, and maybe ask that for the end of the growing season, with maybe adding this back onto the agenda maybe in early October for a follow-up.
Sounds good to me. David?
Yes, I'm in favor of a consensus on this, but I'd also like to put a 4-month stop on it. If in fact we haven't had any motion within 4 months, we really have to take some action. Because like Becky said, this has been a delayed tactic in the past.
Yeah, not from this owner. Not from this owner.
Oh,
yeah, I guess just to clarify.
This is brand new.
Just
These
to clarify,
guys came in immediately. They're going to do whatever they agree to.
Yeah, they've been very responsive. Yeah, and this was on our agenda for our last meeting, which would have been our first meeting since they came in. We just we didn't get to it. It was one of those last items that got continued. So I think they've been responsive, and the son's kind of been helping him work on this while he's in college and with everything going on. So I think it's only been a few months since it's been brought to our attention.
David Barnacle in favor of a consensus.
Steve Haldeman?
Yeah, I'm in favor of it. But I think they probably know, they did the research. If they don't get that gray dogwood in really fast, it will not make it through the year. So they might end up with doing something else if it takes them too long. If they wait till June, it's going to be a problem.
Are you in consensus with the plan?
I am in favor.
Okay, great. Stephen Chidester?
Yep, I agree with what Steve Halterman just said. I'm in agreement with the project.
Yep. And Eric?
Yeah, Eric Gaspar in agreement.
All right. Ed Goodwin in agreement too. Yep. All in favor. So, Becky, warn them about the dogwood, will you?
I will. I was going to recommend they could supplement that with some other native shrub and provide them with a couple options if you like.
Yep.
Berry.
I would be in favor of that. They're pushing it a little too close.
We are now on 118 lead mine.
I just added these next two on here just to give you a quick update. So since our last meeting, I have been notified from the property owner that he has had a land planning firm out of Grafton out there. They have done some wetland delineation. I was provided with a photo with some flagging. I have not been to the site yet, but I am scheduling this for a site visit. I did reach out to different members here about trying to schedule our next site visits on May 27th. I will be adding this to that agenda, and I will be sending that out to you on Friday. So we are planning on having a site visit out there with the property owner and hopefully this consultant that's working with us. So he is making some progress.
Hopefully you'll have a wetland delineation before we go out there.
Yeah, it was flagged. I don't know if they have anything on a plan and any, analysis and size and things like that, but it has been flagged. So.
Right. What else?
So for the next one, DEP file number 300-1021, 30 River Road enforcement order. Same thing, just a quick update for you. I have been back out to the project site since our last meeting. I am going out there tomorrow, and I have been working to seek proposals for you for the wetland consultant, wetland scientist that you're looking for to review impacts to resource areas. So I am working on that and hoping to have those hopefully for you for our next meeting.
Good.
That's all.
That's it?
That's it on that.
Becky, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Becky, can you turn off your screen share so you can get everybody back in kind of big boxes?
Yeah, I don't think I need to show anything else at this time. Okay. Well, you can shut me off of the screen share, right?
No, I can't shut. I can take away your presenter status, but if you can just turn off your screen share, it gets the same thing. There should be your 4 buttons down at the bottom. There's screen in those 4 circles. Down at the bottom of your screen.
I don't have it on the bottom of my screen since I'm
okay.
presenting here. Everything else is minimized on the side.
All right. I'll just hold on. All right.
Here we go.
All right. There we go.
Better? Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Request for certificate. Yep. Request for certificate of compliance, DEP file number 300-761, 2016 Tasco Shore Road. This is an older project that didn't get closed out. What was proposed was a couple small house additions. There was a small area along the driveway that was supposed to have some crushed stone added to it, an existing paved driveway. The property owner, so this project came in about 2007, I believe. Property owner did not move forward with some of the additions and did not add the crushed stone on the side of the driveway. They did a deck expansion and one other small addition on the house. I do have a plan from the engineer that shows what was done and what wasn't done. I did perform a site visit. I looked at the driveway area. I didn't see any concerns. There's no erosion over there. It didn't see that the need. I didn't have a concern that that wasn't implemented. So I don't have any concerns with it. I would recommend issuing a complete certificate, and with that we can just outline the couple of things that weren't done on the project. So I don't have any concerns with that little kind of gravel strip along the driveway, which wasn't included.
All right. All in favor?
David Barnacle in favor of issuing the...
You can just raise your hand on this one. I can see you. Except, no, I can't. No, go ahead. David, Eric, Steve, and Stephen I can't see.
Stephen Chittister, I approve.
Holderman in favor.
All right. You're all set, Becky. We got 5.
Thank you. Okay. Forest cutting plans. There's 2 forest cutting plans on here that came in. I think they came in late March, early April. I went out and did site visits on both of these, and I did speak to Steve Halterman about them too. Brookfield Road, I didn't have any concerns on that one. I walked the site with Hull Forestry. It was Mike Bartlett who did the plan. There was a couple small seep areas that fed into an intermittent stream that had been missed. They added that on there, and they do a filter strip on those. It was a marked cut. They have a couple different landing areas going in to access, which will limit a lot of overuse of skid trails, so I didn't have any concerns there. That did go to the Board of Selectmen, so like I said, I did speak to Steve Halterman about it, shared the plan with him. We didn't have any concerns, so we did send a letter over to the Board of Selectmen just indicating that we didn't have any concerns with the plan.
How are they taking the lumber off the property?
I'm sorry? Can you say that?
How are they taking the lumber off the property? Are they using Brookfield Road?
They're using Brookfield Road. There's an existing driveway that a butter is allowing them to use. And then there's 2 areas on Glendale because it's right on the corner of Brookfield and Glendale, that they'll go in with landings over there. So they'll be going on both sides.
Well, is one of them John Kearns' driveway?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
So this is
Okay.
this is James Kearns' property, which I believe they're brothers, and John, they're going to use John's driveway,
Yeah. Okay.
which will be a good use there.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Shattuck Road.
Shattuck Road. This is a really big property. Follows along Hammett Brook. Has an existing old kind of cart road that goes into it. Has Hammett Brook. There's other resource areas out there. The landings will be inside of the property. Some concern because it would actually require that they have the logging trucks, the large logging trucks, go in along the cart road. There's 4 wetland crossings, some being over Hammett Brook. 3 of those are existing. One crossing was a failed culvert many years ago, and they're proposing to do a temporary bridge over that one. We did talk about some additional BMPs to protect the roadway, the existing culvert that, underneath those large trucks could have some concern. All of the filter strips were marked on site when I went out there for the site visit. It is a marked harvest as well. I did talk to Steve about it because I did have some concerns with, the actual logging trucks going in the vicinity of Hammett Brook and the other wetlands being so close that there could be a concern, and did recommend to the Board of Selectmen to ask for some additional oversight of that project to ensure that resource areas aren't impacted just because of the vulnerability of the wetlands, especially Hammett Brook, and that cart road being, so close to them with that use. So that letter was sent over, and it's my understanding that they accepted and included our request as a condition.
Great.
Okay.
All right. What else?
All right. Correspondence. This letter was provided to you. I don't know if you want to talk about it now, or you want to talk about it when you have the public hearing for the 27 Slad Road related to 50 International. I can pull up the letter.
I think that's the time to do it.
View it.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you wanted to just send us copies of it, that would be one way to do it. Another way would be to just yeah.
Okay, I did send them, but I can resend them. All right. Next is some correspondence that I recently received. This is in regards to 31 South Shore Drive. We recently issued a permit out there, which was the result of a court case. And there was 2 court cases, and one of them was that the property owner of 31 South Shore Drive had to keep the culvert pipe underneath the road free flowing. There was beaver activity. This letter is from an attorney that represents the abutter, which is saying that there's beaver activity in the perennial stream adjacent to the property, which is again interfering with free flow of water in the stream and is threatening to create an impoundment that jeopardizes his property. So this was sent to that property owner, letting him know that, this is happening, and under this court order here, you're supposed to be taking care of these things. We, as well as the Board of Health, were copied on it. I did let Town Council know about it, and I'm working with the Board of Health. We have a site visit scheduled on Thursday with the property owner to take a look at it. So you're aware.
Okay.
Okay.
If you have anything to report, send it back to Barnacle. The rest of us don't want to hear about it.
Okay.
Dave, do a site visit?
The gift that keeps on giving.
That's right. It's like one that will never end.
I know. What else, Beck? Anything?
Just so you're aware, and I will reach out to you, Ed, about this. I was recently informed of a beaver dam down at the town barn field that they did some trapping during the trapping season to help alleviate that issue, but they do think they need to breach that beaver dam. So I am going to be looking into that and seeing if that's something that would qualify and let you know for potential emergency authorization. But I can work with you. I don't have additional details on it yet, but I was just notified of that, so you're aware.
Becca, doesn't that have to go through the Board of Health?
Yep. Yeah, they've contacted Board of Health, and that's how, I got involved this week. So, right, it's my understanding they've filed with Board of Health, and they're in agreement with that measure, but I got to get out there and look at it. Signatures, these are permits that require your signature that you approved at the last meeting. I did provide you with the draft with the conditions. I didn't know if you had any questions or comments on those after you looked at them.
No. I had one comment that I guess I was remiss in not noticing several months ago. The description that you have put into the special conditions about hay bales is a fascinating illustration of what can be done with words. Never said that hay bales are no longer approved. But what you gave was about 26 different examples of how it would be much better if they used something else. I think it's special condition somewhere between 27 and 31. But you included every permutation possible for erosion control except hay bales. I thought it was wonderful.
Why, thank you.
You can, do you need a show of hands on these individually or as a group? Let's do it as a group. Does anybody have any of them that since you were all at the last meeting, and these are all from the last meeting, right? All in favor? David?
Well, first of all, Ed, there were no special conditions on the trailer park down at Cedar Lake. And I was curious about that because I thought you guys had agreed to some special conditions.
No, there was. So let's just go one by one because there was one that Ed and Dave didn't vote for. So if we start with the order of resource area delineation for 8 Picker Road, that was the resource area delineation that was approved. I did add language in there identifying that there is an intermittent stream on the property that they did not ask for us to approve at this time and was not shown on the plan. Therefore, we didn't look at any additional resource area besides the BVW as asked. So that's the ORAD. Now, what I'm asking, I mean, you've already approved the issuance of these permits, but they weren't drafted. So this is for you to add your electronic signature to.
All right.
Do you have to vote on our signature on it? Yes.
Well, yeah, you just give your approval to use your electronic signature on this.
Okay. David? Steve?
Yes.
Eric?
Steve Halderman.
And Stephen. Yep.
Yeah,
and Ed Goodwin.
Gaspar.
Yep. I think Mark Farrell's going to vote on it too. Go ahead, Beck.
Okay. Next is the draft orders of conditions for 36 Goodrich Road, 300-1054. Any questions?
Nope.
David Barnacle agrees to signing.
Steve Halderman agreed.
Yep.
Stephen Chittister
We're all
agreed.
on. Stephen? Yep. Come on, Beck, let's get these. What's the next one?
All right. 300-1055, 8 Birch Street. Ed and Dave, you did not vote for this one. Therefore, I will not add your signature to it, just as a reminder for you. You did ask for a special condition that either be on site or see the trailers be placed. I did add something of that nature in there for a condition, and also added doing an as-built plan, which will show that for you, to show that conformance to the structures being within the same footprint as you outlined.
Did you have that as part of Section 7, the special conditions, Becky? I didn't see it when I was looking for it.
I can just search for it real quick here.
So make sure it has
part
it,
of
Becky, because it was agreed to.
Oh, no, it's in there. I just don't
Okay.
know what number it is offhand. I don't remember.
All right, if it's in there, then
Okay.
fine. Let's go on to Mass Electric.
Did you get
Okay,
We have to approve our signature on that.
I approve my signature, Eric Gaspar.
Stephen
Steve
Chester
Alderman.
on my signature.
And Steve Chidester. So you're all set, Beck. Yep, you get 3.
Thank you.
May they burn in hell.
File number 300-1060, 6 Cormac, oh, I skipped one. 300-1059, the Lake Road, the Mass Electric project. Any questions on that permit?
Nope.
Pretty straightforward. David Barnacle agrees, signature.
Eric Gaspar.
Steve Alderman
agrees.
agrees.
And Ed Goodwin agrees. Got everybody.
Okay, great.
Yep, Steve, yep.
So, 300-1060, 6 Cormac Road. Any questions on that permit?
Nope.
Great.
David Barnacle agrees to signature.
Eric
Steve
Gaspar
Alderman
agrees.
agrees.
Stephen
Ed
Chester
Goodwin
agrees.
Yep. We're all set.
Great. All right, I just want to remind those we have a limited site visit scheduled with the planning
Is that 9
department
o'clock on the
at
27th? 9 a.m.?
That's something separate, but yes, I will send an email out. The plan will be May 27th. We can do our normal 9 o'clock site visit. That is a Wednesday. I'll send you the details of where we're going on that one. But I just want to remind Steve Halterman and Stephen Chidester tomorrow we're having that joint site visit with the peer reviewer at 400 Haynes Street, trying to limit the number of people, so there's only a couple people from each board attending, in addition to the engineer who's doing the third-party review for us and the project engineer. I just want to remind you guys at 10 o'clock tomorrow, 400 Haynes.
Jeff, you have something to say?
I'll be there.
Jeff?
Yes, are you taking separate cars?
Yes. Yep, everyone's meeting at the site.
All right, thank you.
I am.
And Becky, just to remind you, I do have a conference call scheduled until 10 o'clock, so I will be there as quickly as possible after that.
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Becky, we're
I don't have anything
down
else.
to that's it. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Steve Alderman.
Eric Gaspar.
All in favor? We have 5.
Stephen Chester, yes.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks, Becky. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you,
Under
well
3
done.
hours.
Well done.
Woo-hoo.
Nicely done.
Good night.
Thanks for all your hard work, Becky and Holly.
Have a good week, everyone.
Stay safe.